Good morning. I'm Elise Hobson, a venture partner at HX Venture Fund. We are a venture capital fund of funds here in Houston with a business model that's really trying to expand the Houston tech ecosystem as much as we can. And we really do that by attracting capital outside of Houston and bringing it in through our partnerships with what we consider leading VCs across the nation, making it really easy for them to source and invest with Houston startups. And on the flip side, we're also engaging with our corporate limited partner base that's comprised of several well-known successful corporations and institutional investors here in Houston, and helping them engage with companies here that will hopefully help with their innovation roadmap and drive encouraging business results. I'm here today with Josh Fargo of Greater Houston Partnership. Josh, let me hand it over for a brief introduction.
Hey, Elise. Thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here. So I work at the Greater Houston Partnership. We are the organization in the region that helps represent the economic development interests. We try to promote the region abroad and domestically, try to bring new businesses here and try to keep the businesses that are here growing and prosperous. So I work in the research division, and for the past few years, I have taken an interest and spent a lot of time trying to evaluate the tech ecosystem and keep an eye on what's going on. What are the most promising companies in Houston? Who are, who's getting funded, who's moving in, and kind of like just keep an eye on the tech talent. So that's what I've been doing. I'm glad to share some of those thoughts with you today.
Awesome. I can't wait to hear. At HX Venture Fund, we're constantly, trying to shine a light on the Houston ecosystem and really doing that through conversations with our VC partners that are outside of Houston. And today we have a large audience, both comprised of attendees here in Houston and outside of Houston. And in my conversations, I just hear a lot of different misperceptions and what I like to call myths about the VC ecosystem. And, one of the top myths that I often hear about is that Houston's venture capital funding is just stagnant. And I would love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think you hear that a lot, that we don't have enough companies in Houston getting funding. It's hard for companies to attract large venture capital dollars. But I don't know if that was more true 10 or 15 years ago. But I can tell you that certainly in the last 5 and 6 years, Houston has been on a growth trajectory like we haven't seen before. So every year over year for the last 5 years, Houston companies have attracted more and more venture capital funding. And specifically over the last 3 years, that growth has really taken off. I have a chart to kind of show some of those numbers here. So this is broken down kind of into the earliest stage funding there in the green to the A and B rounds for companies that are less than 5 years old. They're in the middle kind of gray category. And then the top category are those more mature growth stage, later stage fundings. In 2020, Houston set a new record. Startups here, tech companies here raised over $715 million. That is slightly higher than the $700 million that we raised in 2019. So even during the pandemic, Houston companies were able to attract lots of money, and that's awesome. That's great for the ecosystem. For the first year ever, we had 3 companies raise more than $100 million last year. That was Preventus Solutions, which is a promising digital health company. That's High Radius, which is a B2B payments firm, and we had Axiom Space, which is developing the first commercial space station. That I love that those 3 companies got the 100 million mark last year, because it kind of illustrates what we have growing, kind of our strengths right now, which are aerospace, health tech taking off, and software. So that's the good news. The slightly concerning issue with 2020 was we did not see an uptick in deals. You can see that here. The deal count, we would like to see that grow. What's happening is in 2020, especially, it was more difficult for these earliest stage companies to meet with new VCs, to kind of court that initial funding. It was also more difficult for VCs to take risks on unproven business models. So what we saw was that those mature stage fundings continued to come in. VCs found kind of a safe harbor in these like companies that were already more established, that were kind of just needed more growth funding. Larger checks were written, basically. The average deal size went up. And so in 2021, what we'd hope to see is to get that green category growing a little bit more, where the earliest stage companies are getting more funding. And that's why, events like this are so important, where we get more access and more checks written to kind of those companies that need that seed stage funding. And it's also why we need a robust and a healthy startup ecosystem.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And, hopefully we do have this pitch competition coming up later in the day, and helping fund some of those really early stage companies. We had a lot of early stage applicants submit to that competition. And so hopefully creating some deal flow through there as well. Another myth I often hear is that there's just no tech talent here in Houston. It's all in San Francisco or Austin. And, we don't have that much here in Houston, but I find that to be hard to believe. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, at least this is a personal bugaboo of mine. We hear this all the time. We heard on, 2017 when we were trying to attract Amazon, and we kind of infamously didn't make the top 20 list. That there is a perception that we lack tech talent in Houston. Houston actually has loads of tech talent. The issue is it's kind of buried in industries that are not in the computer and software realm right up front. But we have the numbers. We're doing pretty good numbers. So we have 235,000 tech workers. These numbers come from an industry organization called CompTIA. They produce a report every year called Cyber States. And this is a really great report. I'd encourage everybody to check it out. What they do is they look across the US and they say, what's the state of the computer and technology industry? And so the way that they count tech workers, they look at both, the industry side, who's working for software companies, who's working for computer companies and tech companies, and then who is working in tech occupations that are not necessarily in the tech industry. Houston, among the top 10 largest cities, has the largest share of our tech workers in non-tech industries. So we have about 2/3 of our tech occupations in non-tech industries. So whereas they may be, front and center in a place like San Francisco, working at companies that are a little bit more tech oriented in the products that they offer, in Houston, you have data scientists working at Waste Management, for example, or you have software engineers working at Chevron. But those skills are highly transferable to the tech industry. And I'll give you an example. The current CIO of Intel is Archana Deskus. She came from, before she was at Intel, she came from HPE right here in Houston. And before she was at HPE, she was at Baker Hughes. And so she came right out of the oil and energy industry. And that shows that somebody at that level can go from the energy industry and take her skills that she is using in the energy industry and transfer them directly to Intel, which is one of the the most cutting edge tech companies in the world. And so those skills are transferable. We have about 7% of our total workforce tied into tech, and 235,000. Could we have more? Absolutely. It's 12th in the U.S. It's more than Austin, for example. You wouldn't, if that surprises you, it's probably because Austin is a smaller ecosystem. It's a smaller economy. Those tech workers are more likely to run into each other. at restaurants, at at the coffee shop. It's just a denser community, and so that's a challenge that Houston has. We could certainly attract more tech talent. It's why Houston needs to focus on kind of building up intentionally this tech ecosystem so that we can create opportunities for these collisions. That's why things like startup development organizations and pitch competitions have a bigger impact in a place like Houston, because there just aren't as many opportunities to kind of natively have those interactions and share that talent and share those ideas.
I think those are all really great points. You know, the third myth I often hear about all the time when I'm in conversations is Houston's just the energy capital of the world, and it's all about oil and gas and energy here in Houston. There's really not any other types of innovations within the tech ecosystem here. I would love to hear your thoughts on those.
Yeah, so there is no denying that the energy industry has had a huge impact on the development of Houston's economy, and that is absolutely true in tech as well. And maybe 10 years ago, you could even make a claim like that and say that really Houston doesn't have that much more going on for itself than energy. But over the past few decades, we've really diversified the economy, and that's definitely true in tech. So today, honestly, healthcare has actually supplanted energy as kind of becoming Houston's like #1 target for venture capital funding. We have a tremendous digital health economy and sector kind of coming up. Here's some numbers kind of showing a comparison. I did an analysis over 2 decades of venture capital deals, and you can see that we actually had more life science venture capital deals than we did oil and gas over that time span. We had, software as a service was our third leading sector. These are basically verticals. So, we have a lot going on. We have, manufacturing and artificial intelligence, machine learning. So there's a tremendous number of things outside of the oil and gas industry that we are leading on, including clean tech. So that's an emerging sector that we need to watch. In fact, last year we had more clean tech deals get done than oil and gas deals. And software as a service is also starting to, in the past 5 years, really take over, the place that kind of oil and gas and tech, energy tech, kind of had, right?
Definitely. You know, I think this is a perfect segue into the next question I really wanted to get your feedback on. And that really is, what types of verticals do you see trending? We're known for the innovations in energy industry, as I just mentioned, and healthcare. But are there any other verticals that you really see as notable and trending here in Houston right now?
Yeah, one of our big strengths is kind of actually a niche area that we have really kind of carved out a core competency in, and that is B2B payments. So the fact that we have so many corporations headquartered here, they have really sticky problems when it comes to making tons of transactions. Think about how many transactions an integrated oil and gas company has or an energy firm has. That basically created this problem that needed to be solved. And companies like High Radius, new startups like Data Gumbo, they have really stepped up to the challenge of solving that issue of fintech related B2B payments and tracking those payments. You can see the models proving out in the fact that we were able to attract Bill.com, who opened their second location in Houston a couple of years ago. Another one to mention would be health technology. You saw that Second MD just got purchased by Accolade for $460 million. Preventus Solutions was our largest venture capital deal. These are companies making technology solutions that make it easier for patients to be monitored at home or communicate with doctors at home. Obviously, that's been important in 2021. So we'll see that trend continue. Cybersecurity, is another one that we've shown a lot of success in over the years, and I expect that to continue.
Great. I think some of those verticals that you just mentioned will be coming up after our session in the Game Changer series, specifically fintech and cybersecurity. And I think that Game Changer series will also showcase some of the trends that are really gaining traction and success here in Houston. And so I encourage our audience to tune into those as well. Some really dynamic panel discussions around several different verticals here in Houston. I know we're getting close to our time limit, but I wanted to end this discussion with something that I think most of us are interested in, and that really is, what do you see in your crystal ball for 2021? 2020 was a heck of a year for most of us, and I think we're all ready for 2021. And what do you see coming up in the pipeline here for Houston VC this year?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I think like this is going to be the year that clean tech really emerges as kind of becoming, planting its flag in Houston and saying that Houston is, the emerging hub for clean tech in the U.S. The opening of Greentown Labs coming in. And there's actually been several new incubators opening for clean technology. There's a lot of movement in that space. There's a lot of energy companies that are interested in that energy transition. The partnership certainly is, and so I think that we'll see a lot of movement in 2021 on clean tech. I also think we'll see continued expansions of tech companies in from California. It was nice to have the announcement that HPE was locating their global headquarters here, so that's awesome. I think we'll see more of that. I think we will also see more homegrown success stories like Lion Guard. Just a tremendous story, incubated and started in kind of Station Houston, angel funding from Houston Angel Network. It's a local success story. Another success story would be Rebellion Photonics, which won a pitch competition early on, the Rice business competition early in its growth, and they were just purchased by Honeywell. And then, a final trend, I'm seeing a lot of great movement when it comes to women-led startups in Houston. So I looked back over the past few years, and we've seen just growth after, year after year growth in this area. So this is a look at the number of VC deals that are getting done by women who are in the C-suite. 19 VC deals is not enough for 2019, but it is more than we've ever had that I could find. And so I think this is a trend that's really positive, and that we will continue to see that we have really promising companies that are run by women in Houston.
Wow. Well, I'm super excited to see if some of those trends do come to fruition as we continue on in this year. Josh, this has been a really great and insightful conversation. I thank you for your time, and look forward to seeing what this year has to hold for us.
Hey, thank you, Elise. I loved chatting with you.
Thanks.